Spears rise toward the moon as the soldiers lock into formation, getting ready to move. A roar goes up, and the army rushes out of the darkness, charging straight toward the enemy. One armored fighter kicks off the ground, shooting forward ahead of the others as the attack begins. He cuts straight through the battlefield, sprinting in the rain like nothing around him matters except the guy ahead. He suddenly shoots up and then drops right into the enemy line like a human projectile, aiming straight for the center. He lands in front of the knight at point-blank range, turning the whole chaotic battle into a direct showdown between the two. He suddenly releases a wave of dark power, slicing through the front line in one heavy strike. The purple energy spreads out across the field, tearing through the soldiers who try to surround him. The power then curls back around him, covering half his face and showing just how dangerous he really is. He slams his foot down, and that purple energy erupts from the ground, shooting forward like a wave toward the soldiers. The earth explodes in a column of flames and shattered stone, swallowing everything in its path. One of the knights is left standing in the middle of the blaze, armor glowing as the flames climb up his body. The purple blast tears through the knights, tossing their bodies around in the storm of energy. He's left gasping, blood on his face, while that dark power still coils around him. He straightens up in the ruined battlefield, purple energy at his feet and those red eyes behind him, making it clear he's the last thing standing. He's standing there covered in sweat and dust, breathing hard, but he's still on his feet. He tightens his grip on the weapon and straightens his back, trying to steady himself as the battlefield finally quiets down. He turns his head with a tired but sharp look, like he's already searching for the next threat. A new knight steps forward, towering in front of him with sword drawn, facing the lone survivor in the ruined battlefield. From a distance, she questions him, demanding to know why he chose this path. We see her face up close, furious and hurt, shouting why he made a deal with that dark power and turned his blade against his own side. We cut to him standing calmly in the rubble, sword in hand, those red demon eyes floating around him as she finally recognizes who he is. He looks up at the eyes, bloody and exhausted, almost mulling over the word betrayal like he's tasting it. Then he lets out a small, bitter smile, admitting to himself that, yeah, from their side, it'll only ever look like he betrayed them. He throws her words back at her, saying they were the ones who betrayed him. She shouts for him to stop and demands an answer, while he turns toward her, ready to respond. He lifts his head and begins to talk about how everything started, leading into his past. The scene cuts away from the battlefield into a bright, glitchy blue flash, like a game screen kicking in. A system window pops up, announcing that the first part of the game, Inner Lunatic, has been cleared, with a clear count stacked up for many runs. We jump to a guy at his cluttered desk in front of his monitor, taking his hands off the keyboard and relaxing after finishing that section. He looks over his desk and screen, satisfied after farming a bunch of items and even finishing some hidden quests in the game. The view shifts to a calendar with a specific date circled, showing he's already marked the day he's expected to die next month. Then it cuts to a brain scan from 2 years earlier, hinting at the diagnosis that set that deadline. At the hospital, the doctor sits him down in the office and starts explaining the results of his tests. He listens in silence as the doctor delivers the news about his condition. Later, he sits alone on a couch, staring down at the diagnosis paper in his hands. The doctor explains they've checked him at multiple hospitals and run a lot of tests. He sits there listening while the doctor talks about the same result and offers painkillers. He grips the diagnosis paper in his hand, holding it tightly. The pill bottle tips over, spilling tablets across the floor. His hand dangles off the chair near the scattered pills, like he's been living with them for a while. He leans back in the chair, reflecting that it's already been 2 years since he got that diagnosis. He stares ahead, saying nothing. The view shifts to the corner of the room, showing the dresser with the calendar on top and trash bags piled on the floor. He leans forward in his chair, flicking a lighter in his hands. He coughs into his hand, sees the blood, and realizes his condition is getting worse. He wipes his mouth, sits by the window, and tries to calm himself, accepting that thinking about it won't change anything. His phone lights up on the desk with a notification, and he reaches over to pick it up. He picks up his phone and sees a new notification from the hospital on the lock screen. He opens it, and the screen is filled with the same kind of hospital messages about exams and appointments. He leans back in his chair by the window, sighs, and thinks about how no one has contacted him since the memory loss, and he also has no one he can message either. He grips a blood-stained tissue in his hand. He sets the phone down on his desk, where a stack of papers is spread out. On top of the pile are flyers and forms about late-stage cancer groups and hospice programs. He crushes the paper hard in his hand. He pushes himself up from the chair, and the papers scatter across the room. He stays there, bent forward with his head down over the desk, not moving. He lifts his head and looks back at the monitor. The Inner Lunatic start screen is up, asking for a new run, and he decides to go for it. He selects yes and types in the player name, Carl. He sits there in front of the monitor, thinking about what kind of character to make for this new run. The character creation screen opens and the trait list slides into view. He moves the cursor through the options and selects a busted combo: Mana Sensitivity Genius with Swordsmanship and Combat Genius. He stops for a moment as a new system window pops up on the screen. The game warns that taking multiple genius traits adds a penalty. It then slaps on the penalty. A negative trait called Terminally Ill gets locked onto his character. He sits still at his desk, hand on the mouse, staring at the screen. He leans back in the chair and lets out a short laugh, comparing himself with the character. The game asks if he wants to start with this setup, and he confirms it. He clicks the mouse to start the game. A strange blue light bursts out from the screen and spreads through the room, making him turn toward it. His chair suddenly tips, and he falls out of it as everything glitches around him. He falls to the floor beside his chair, breathing hard while the monitor fades out of focus behind him. His vision starts to dim, and on the screen the game calmly reports that character creation went through as he feels himself slipping. Right after that, another system window pops up, showing that the game has overwritten the name he chose and changed the character's name on its own. A synchronization screen appears somewhere in a bright, ornate room, the percentage climbing until it stops at 71%. Another system window pops up, confirming that the character setup is finished. In that room, a hand resting on white fabric suddenly tightens into a fist, showing the body has started to move. He lies on the unfamiliar bed, then slowly opens his eyes. He swings his legs over the side and sits up, looking around the room. He leans forward a little, staring ahead as he's about to speak. He gets off the bed and looks around the wide, luxurious room, trying to place where he is. He steps onto the floor barefoot and walks out into the hall, following the layout he vaguely remembers. He stops in front of a mirror and freezes when he sees the reflection staring back at him. He reaches out and presses his hand against the mirror, checking if what he's seeing is real. In the reflection, he recognizes the body he's inside now. The character knocks from the game. The narration cuts back to the present, tying it together. His story in this world started with that crash landing as Knox von Rayhafer. In this world, there's a dark, noble house called the Rainhafer family, one of the 3 big names tied to the criminal group Lunatic. Their mansion is introduced as a place that's produced monster-level geniuses in both magic and swordsmanship for generations, with 5 siblings in the current line. Then it zooms in on Knox, the youngest, and points out he's the only one in the entire family born without any talent. Since he was the only useless one in the family, Knox ended up performing a forbidden ritual and making a contract with a devil statue. That contract is what turned him into the game's most notorious villain. Back in the present, the MC touches his face and body, realizing he's really inside Knox's body and wondering if this is just a dream. A status window opens, listing his basic info as Knox von Rainhafer, a 14-year-old human with darkness as his main element and his traits arranged below. A stats page appears next, showing his numbers for stamina, mana, luck, will, and charm. He checks the list closely and notices stamina is sitting at just 2, way lower than the rest. A system screen lists traits: neutral, void revelation, negative, terminally ill, curse of the week, frequent sickness, cold hands and feet, possession. He checks the record and compares it to the previously customized character. The page specifies, terminally ill, 1 year remaining on the player's lifespan. He closes on the entry and updates his plan based on the listed constraints. He reviews the floating text. A list of traits appears, including void-type neutral and several negatives like terminal illness, curse of the week, frequent sickness, cold extremities, and possession. He recalls setting up a character earlier and realizes the sheet matches those settings. Memory cut. At his desk, he built a player profile patterned after himself. Terminally ill, isolated, with 1 year left on the clock. He squeezes the quill, recalling why he built the sickly build. A system window pops up. Mailbox shows one unread message and asks to check it. He opens the interface and brings up the mailbox screen to view the new mail. A system mail pops up. The message addresses him by 2 names, Yu-chan and Nox. He checks the mail, noting the sender knows his identity in this world. Cut to a brief backstory card. Yu-chan is his given name, left by parents whose whereabouts are unknown. A system window floats beside Nox, hinting the sender knows how he ended up here. He studies it, trying to link it to his missing past. Another window opens. The sender claims Nox won't remember them, but they have a message anyway. Nox faces the screen, waiting. A final line appears, a familiar greeting from the unseen sender. Nox turns toward the light from the window as the message continues. A system-style message evaluates his past 2 years and acknowledges his progress. Another line follows, confirming he has a rightful place in this world. He stands before the floating screen in his room as it displays a welcome back notice. It cuts back to his old modern world for a moment, then fades away. We return to the mansion, with him standing in front of the window, taking in where he is now. His hand curls into a fist as he tries to accept that this world is his reality. A new message window appears, saying the sender can't reveal who they are, but wants to assist him. He reads the message carefully, wondering what kind of help this is supposed to be. The next instruction comes through clearly. It tells him to enroll in Eldian Academy. It shows Eldian Academy with its students, and the message tells him that's where he needs to go, build his own group, and move along the game's original route. Another line says if he does that, the real truth behind everything will eventually come out on its own. He throws his hands up, annoyed that the big help he got is basically just that vague instruction. He calms himself down, pats his head, and decides to sort everything out step by step. Facing the mirror, he goes over the situation. He's now in the body of the game's last boss. Looking out the window, he connects the dots and realizes that following the main story basically leads straight to that boss's death. He checks the message again, the one that calls him Yu-chan and Nox, and mulls over what it says. Standing by the window, he decides he's not dropping the goal of getting his missing memories back. He opens a magic book, and a huge pillar of light bursts out of it like a glowing tree as he starts planning what he'll do in this world. He stands there in his pajamas, barefoot on the floor, and sets one clear goal for himself here: survive. It cuts to that future image of him on the battlefield, cloak and sword in hand, fully stepping into the villain role, if that's what it takes to live. Back in his room, he mutters that, thinking about it, his situation isn't that different from before. In both worlds, he's just trying to keep living a little longer. It flashes back to 2 years before, when the doctor first told him he was terminally ill. We see pills drifting in the dark as he explains how every second back then just felt like counting down to his death. A ticking clock appears among the pills, and he points out that in this new world, the only real difference is the backdrop. The time bomb is still there. He looks around the fancy room and confirms he's really inside the world of Inner Lunatic, the place he knows best. He calls the system and asks for the current date, and the window answers, February 4th, 1812. He realizes that puts him close to the start of the game's events, says he doesn't have much time, and gets ready to make his first move. He decides, all right, let's treat this like my 28th run, and gets ready to play the game in real life. He walks out of his room, grabbing the door handle to head into the mansion. Cut to another door somewhere else being grabbed, red light flaring around the hand, hinting that something dangerous is already moving. As he steps out, a sharp pain shoots through his wrist, and he looks down, confused. A system window pops up saying his negative trait has kicked in, and he's now got wrist inflammation for being sick all the time. He shuffles down the hallway, clutching his wrist, wondering what's wrong with his body and if he's really this fragile. A maid crashes straight into him in the hallway, slamming her head into his chest. The tray she was carrying goes flying, and all the plates shatter across the floor. She ends up sitting in the middle of the mess, blushing and flustered while he stares, wondering who this clumsy girl is. Nox and the maid crash into each other. Dishes explode on the floor, and the whole hallway staff instantly panics, shouting his name. While he's rubbing his side in pain, Nox gets a proper look at the maid and realizes, wait, this girl looks exactly like Rona from the game. Rona drops to her knees in front of him, freaking out and begging for forgiveness, acting like bumping into him is some huge crime. We cut to a memory where Rona, just a side character, used to gossip and laugh about how the useless, young master scolded her all the time. Back in the present, Nox connects that memory to the maid in front of him and realizes this innocent-looking girl is the same one who badmouthed him behind his back. Instead of acting like the original Nox, he smiles and lets the incident go on the surface, but internally he's already decided how he's going to handle and use her from now on. Nox ends it with a cold warning, basically telling Rona she won't get a second chance if she messes up again. Rona hurriedly nods and laughs it off, clinging to the fact that he at least forgave her this time. As he steps away, Nox notices how strangely calm the mansion feels while the other servants are gathered and chattering excitedly about something. The servants all stiffen up, staring at Nox and Rona after that intense moment on the floor. Nox straightens his back, clutching his side a bit, as he reminds himself he's supposed to be the crazy, youngest son and wonders what kind of life the original Nox actually lived. Rona hesitates and asks where he's going, and Nox casually brushes her off, saying he's heading to the practice hall. All the servants just stand there stunned as Nox casually announces he's heading out instead of causing trouble. He suddenly adds that Rona has to come with him, and she panics inside, imagining this is some kind of private punishment call. As they walk out toward the estate grounds, the mansion in the background, Rona's thoughts spiral, and she convinces herself she's being taken somewhere to get beaten. Nox walks down the corridor with Rona trailing beside him, heading deeper into the mansion. Rona keeps sneaking looks at him, clearly tense as she follows. Nox focuses on his goal, deciding that before anything else, he has to secure his own survival in this world. We cut back to his last moments in the old world. Slumped in his chair, he realizes that actually dying once was more than enough to convince him of one thing. Close up on his eye, a single tear falls as the thought hits him hard. He never wanted to die in the first place. Back to the present in the mansion courtyard. Nox walks forward, already planning. If he wants to stay alive this time, he has to adapt to this body, this game world, and its rules as fast as possible. As they walk through the garden, Nox starts thinking about how he might still be able to survive in this world. Rona quietly watches him, confused about what he's suddenly planning. Nox calls out for his status window, triggering the system screen to appear in front of him. We cut to the game's emblem, a dark, bat-like wing and a crown skull over a shield, setting up the inner lunatic world. Opposite that, white angel wings and roses represent the side of angels and the Empire, hinting at a huge conflict that made the game super popular. Now we see a lone-suited character standing in the middle of a glowing web of routes, showing how the game branches like crazy so players can clear it in tons of different ways. He explains that basic traits like ordinary or talented are common and can be stacked on a character without any problem. Then he points out the real jackpot. Genius traits are different, and usually only one of each can exist, so they're extremely rare. As he and Rona walk out in front of the mansion, he thinks about how anyone who gets a genius trait can easily rise to the top of that specialty. Nox looks straight ahead, calm but serious, and admits that unlike normal players, he's actually holding two genius traits at the same time. The scene shifts into an explanation screen. The game shows the concept of trait penalties, where picking a trait beyond your limits slaps you with a harsh downside. We see the old character creation menu with the genius options highlighted. Another system window appears, listing neutral trait and the negative trait terminally ill. Knox explains how he abused this mechanic, using the system's analysis to offset the penalty and basically force the game to give him 2 genius traits in one build. The scene cuts to a swordsman going wild with slashes, showing how this swordsmanship and combat genius trait basically turns you into a natural-born fighter who can reach the peak of sword arts just by grinding. Then we see a mage wrapped in blazing flames, representing mana sensitivity genius, a trait that lets you feel mana like air and cast spells way faster and stronger than normal. Back to Knox, he casually notes there are a bunch of broken traits like these, but he's the crazy guy who stacked 2 of them on one body, along with all the penalties that came with it. MC explains a perk that lets the main hero see other people's stats. Another trait makes you a perfect actor who can fake anything. Knox walks through the estate, saying his steel mentality keeps him calm in fights, but there's still a problem with his setup. He checks the fine print on his build and sees the terminally ill timer ticking down his remaining year. The system throws up a whole list of extra debuffs: weakness, constant sickness, cold limbs, even possession. He laughs it off on the outside, but in his head he's like, yeah, my body's basically a mobile hospital ward. As he steps into the water, the narration explains his body's so cold that icy places are basically off limits for him. We cut to a memory of him suddenly collapsing in a fancy hall, showing how often his weak body just gives out. Back in the present outside the mansion, he awkwardly scratches his head while Rona watches, and he resigns himself to dealing with these stupid debuffs somehow. Keycap 1 Knox walks under the bright sky, shielding his eyes from the sun, deciding to just take things step by step as he heads toward the practice hall. Keycap 2 Rona trails behind him, staring at his back, nervous and wondering if he's really serious about going in there. Keycap 3 close up on Rona's face as she hesitates, about to call out to him, but unsure if she should. Knox looks straight ahead, calm face, but you can feel he's locked in on his goal. Rona walks beside him, sneaking a curious glance, wondering what he's planning. He spreads his arms and opens the massive practice hall doors, stepping into the place like it's his battlefield. A terrifying vision of the curse of the weak flashes in his mind, and he firmly decides this is the first thing he has to break. The moment he grips the sword, he immediately understands just how outclassed this body is. Reality hits him. This final boss frame is closer to a glass cannon than a monster. Panic climbs up his spine as he realizes mastering combat here is going to be hell. His body completely gives out almost immediately. He figures out his limit is barely 10 swings before he's done. He realizes the curse of the weak is what's making progress this painful. He catches his breath, eyeing the armory full of weapons. The Rienhafers' history starts with the sword, etched into their family crest. Of all their titles, one fits best, the High House of the Blade and Darkness. The Rienhafers earned that title because their sword style is built on pouring dark magic into every strike. In the past, their commander carved battlefields apart with that power alone. His weapon became a legend, remembered as the tyrannical Blade of Darkness. That legendary sword has been passed down through every head of the Rienhafer family, carrying their entire history of blood and glory. Knox blinks, then brushes off the grand legacy talk. What really matters to him are the perks of being born into a noble house. He zeroes in on the most important benefit in his situation: money. With enough cash, his chances of surviving in this world shoot way up. He grins, deciding that in this world, money is the real MVP. The narration explains that the Rienhafer clan is one of the top noble houses, drowning in gold. Even their useless youngest son has enough wealth to live comfortably without lifting a finger. Knox explains that his father, Teo, is so rich and indifferent that he doesn't really care how Knox spends money. He sums up Knox's original role in the game: the youngest noble son, a clear useless rich kid archetype. Back in the training hall, He hunches over, already planning to milk that archetype and use every coin for his own survival. Knox's legs are trembling already. Just standing is a struggle. He's completely out of breath, while Rona nervously imagines him making some bizarre demand. We cut to a few minutes earlier in the practice hall, right before this exhausting training started. Rona comes back with everything Knox asked for: wooden sword, towel, and water. She reports that everything's ready, looking tired but respectful. In her head, she doubts him, wondering if this sickly young master is really going to exercise seriously. Knox checks that no one else is around and casually calls Rona closer. Rona totally freaks out, dropping to the floor and assuming he's about to punish her. Knox gets irritated and confused, demanding why she's acting like that when he never meant to hit her. Knox pulls Rona close and whispers his secret request in her ear. She listens stiffly, trying to process what he's asking for. Rona explodes in shock when she realizes how he plans to use all that money. Rona clenches her fists, clearly thinking all of Knox's money-making ideas are garbage. Knox ignores her complaints, casually shutting her down and ordering her to handle it anyway. Grumbling to herself, Rona rushes out of the hall, convinced her young master hasn't changed at all. Knox puts training on pause, knowing brute effort won't fix his problem. He figures Rona should return with what he asked for by tomorrow at the latest. Until then, he cools his head and recovers his strength, getting ready for the real plan to start. Knox sips his drink, stressing over how to fix his curse and pathetic stamina. He freezes mid-sip when someone suddenly appears beside him. The newcomer is the stern head butler, Rodwell D. Ernark, staring down at him. Rodwell isn't just a butler. He's basically the one managing the whole Rienhafe, our estate, so Knox can't treat him casually. He's the man who kneels only to Knox's father, completely loyal to the head of the family. Facing that kind of person, Knox's hand tightens around the cup, shaking a little. Knox realizes dealing with Rodwell might become a serious problem he'll have to overcome. He thinks how the butler normally ignores him and wonders if Rodwell has noticed something off. Knox steels himself, deciding he'll handle the situation with his own methods. Knox forces himself to act calm and distant, letting his master of acting trait kick in as he questions why Rodwell is here. Rodwell explains he's come under the family head's orders to deliver important news. The news is simple. Knox is being summoned to attend the family dinner tonight. Knox panics inside. He's barely figured this family out, and now his father suddenly wants him at dinner. He tries to brush it off and say he can't go, but Rodwell doesn't budge. Rodwell explains why. An important guest has arrived, the lady of the Stilliner family. Skipping dinner isn't an option. She's the lady of the Stilliner family, a future night monster I really didn't want to meet this early. Rodwell warns me that if I skip this dinner, Father will definitely take it as defiance. With no way out, I reluctantly accept and decide to endure tonight's dinner. Rodwell pauses, confused by Knox's attitude. He senses something off about Knox today and studies him carefully. Rodwell points out that Knox has always avoided swords, yet came to the practice hall on his own this time. Rodwell presses Knox, asking why he suddenly decided to train with a sword. Knox straightens up, drops the polite act, and speaks with sharp authority. He puts Rodwell in his place, reminding him he's just a butler and has no right to question his master. Knox shuts him down, calmly reminding Rodwell who the real master is and that his choices are his own. Rodwell freezes, shaken by how different and resolute the boy suddenly feels. Realizing he crossed the line, the head butler lowers his head and offers a formal apology. Knox ends the talk there and walks out, leaving Rodwell standing in silence. Rodwell wonders if Knox has caught on to something and decides he must report this to the family head. Outside, the day at the Rienhafner estate goes on under a clear, bright sky. Knox shuts the door behind him, hands still shaking from the tension. He sucks in air, stunned that such a big event already happened this early. For a second, he imagines his possession trait going off near them, then forces himself to stop overthinking and move on. Knox finally remembers. The guest is the Stilliner family's young lady, a famous prodigy knight. He recalls her brutal talent and temper, realizing this isn't just a casual visit, but a dangerous story flag. Night settles over the mansion. Time fast-forwards toward the dinner where Knox will have to face her and his family event. As soon as Knox shows up at the table, the others mentally scoff, already annoyed that he's here. He sits in silence, expression stiff, trying to ignore the hostile atmosphere around him. His brothers openly mock him in their heads, acting like he's pathetic for ever expecting anything good from this family. The older brothers act fake friendly, but their words are all sarcasm, shocked he even dared to show up at the table. They start mocking his reputation, bringing up how the useless youngest even caused rumors just by looking at a maid. Knox keeps his mouth shut, thinking he hasn't done anything yet, but he's already the joke of the family as dinner barely begins. The family head, Theo von Reinhafer, arrives and the whole room tenses up. Knox steels himself, remembering that this man is his ruthless father in both game and reality. Then the red-haired girl steps into view, the Stilliner heiress, a future monster of a night Knox knows very well from the game. A red-haired girl steps forward with a bright smile, formally introducing herself as Talia von Stilliner to everyone at the table. Knox's father explains that the Stilliner young lady has come to their estate for night training and will be staying here for a while. Knox's brothers lean back in their chairs, smirking and whispering to each other, already way too interested in this night practice excuse. Talia von Stilliner steps forward, introduced as a guest for night training. Knox recognizes her name. She's the main heroine of Inner Lunatic. He remembers her role in the story, the one destined to clash with Knox, the future villain. Knox's thoughts darken as he recalls her final act in the game's plot. She's the heroine who is supposed to drive a sword through his chest someday. Theo notices that Knox actually showed up to the family dinner. Talia glances at him, a bit curious, while Knox avoids her gaze. The tense introduction ends as everyone finally starts eating in silence. Knox quietly eats while his older brothers gossip and laugh, completely ignoring him. One brother finally speaks up to their father, saying it's time to decide an important matter. Knox tenses when he realizes what it is, choosing who will be sent to the elite Eldian Academy. Theo nods, saying it's finally time to decide who'll enter Eldian Academy. Narration explains Eldian Academy is the key stage of Inner Lunatic, the most important place in the whole story. Students there are dragged into all kinds of crises and end up fighting demons at the academy, which is where the main plot unfolds. Knox makes up his mind. He has to enter Eldian Academy. He thinks about the academy as the main stage of the story and plans to keep the plot intact while secretly gathering his own allies there. At the table, his father brings up the rule. Only 3 members from their family are allowed to attend, turning it into a competition. Theo calmly explains that Eldian limits how many nobles can enroll, and their family has already spent 2 slots on the older brothers. Only 1 academy ticket remains. Knox remembers how his father invested everything into those 2 heirs, and how the final spot will decide who gets to stand at Eldian as the next representative of the Reinhafer family. He forces a confident smile, locking in a new goal. Before he can recruit allies or change the story, he has to steal that last entrance ticket for himself, no matter what it takes. Theo finally reveals his answer. The academy ticket will be decided the same way it always has been in their family. Knox instantly reads between the lines, realizing his father is basically proposing a showdown between the brothers for that spot. Theo is taken aback, not expecting the usually useless youngest son to be the first one to step up. Knox's father calmly sets the deadline. In 1 month, the duel in the practice hall will decide who gets the final academy ticket. The 2 older brothers smirk and taunt Knox in front of everyone, confident that a frail shut-in like him could never beat them. Talia quietly studies Knox from the side, her expression tightening as she senses the tension and the blatant contempt aimed at him. Knox casually sips his drink, telling his brothers they can flap their mouths after they actually win. One brother snaps, yelling if Knox really thinks a weakling like him can beat them. Knox ignores the barking and focuses on the real issue in his head. This duel is just another hurdle he has to clear to grab that academy entrance ticket. Nox pauses with the glass in his hand. Then a calm certainty settles in his eyes. The entrance ticket isn't just a goal anymore. It's something he's already decided belongs to him. He raises the glass and openly declares his intent, confidence dripping from his smile. In his mind, Eldian Academy is already his stage, and this duel is just the first step to get there. Teo studies his youngest son in silence, taken aback by the sudden resolve. For the first time, Nox feels less like the family's weak link and more like an unpredictable piece that might change the whole board. Nox's two older brothers grit their teeth, staring at him in disbelief and annoyance, clearly pissed that the useless youngest dared to speak so boldly. Talia leans forward a little, fingers curled near her collar as a playful smile tugs at her lips. She watches Nox with amused eyes, clearly entertained. With that same teasing smile, Talia comments that the young master seems pretty confident, as if she's testing how serious he really is. Talia leans forward, laughing with bright interest, while Nox freezes, feeling her gaze lock onto him and realizing he's said too much. Under the starry night sky, he grimly thinks that he's just caught the attention of the one person he really shouldn't have. Later that night, the light from his window spills out as a stack of documents sits on the desk, the first step in planning how he'll survive the coming duel and the academy. Teo sits behind his desk, reading Rodwell's report. He admits that, just like the butler said, Nox really has changed. Rodwell answers respectfully that it certainly seems so, saying he wouldn't have believed it if he hadn't seen Nox today. Teo leans back, thinking hard. Teo pictures a grim reaper behind Nox and wonders if his son has been taken over by a demon. He brushes the thought away for now, saying Nox has at least earned his attention and tells Rodwell he understands. As morning light spreads over the estate, Teo orders Rodwell to keep a close watch on Nox from here on out. Nox is running hard across the courtyard, out of breath, heading straight for the practice hall again. The maids gossip in the courtyard, whispering that there's going to be a duel in 1 month and wondering why it's happening. Nox sprints around the estate again, running laps with serious effort while the staff watch, confused why all he ever does is run. Still mid-run, Nox glances back at the distant maids, shocked that he can clearly hear every word they're saying and wondering when he got hearing this sharp. Nox keeps sprinting across the courtyard, panting hard but refusing to slow down. A system window pops up. His stamina goes up by just 0.1, and he gets annoyed at how tiny the gain is. While he runs, Nox thinks that stamina is his biggest weakness. If he wants any chance in the duel, he has to fix that first, even if the progress is slow. Nox remembers the condition for using his swordsmanship and combat genius trait. His stamina has to reach 4. He recalls the game text mocking how only someone as weak as Nox would struggle, while a normal person could activate it easily if not for the curse of the weak. Running with a strained smile, he thinks back to his past life and notes that it took him an entire month of grinding just to raise his stamina by 1.9. The narration explains the curse of the weak, shown as a grim, chained, hooded figure with a skull. It clarifies that this curse cuts the user's growth rate in half. While running, Nox checks his status window, annoyed that all that running only raised his stamina by 0.1, and notes that his terminally ill trait also have his growth rate, making progress painfully slow. Nox slows down, panting and staring at his status screen, thinking how he has to work 4 times harder than everyone else and still wonders why it's this tough. His stats pop up, stamina 15, mana 30. He sums it up in his head. Even after all this grinding, his terminally ill trait caps his stamina at 15, but he decides to set that worry aside for now. We cut to the practice card, neatly arranged with training tools and a sealed scroll, hinting that Nox has something new planned for his next step. Rona pushes a card over, a bit out of breath, and tells Nox she's brought everything he asked for yesterday. Nox smiles to himself, surprised she was this fast, and thinks now he can finally start making real progress. He lays out the rare ingredients on the table: Gorgon poison, a fairy's dew, a golem core, and a stamina growth scroll, calmly thinking that with these, hitting 4 stamina shouldn't be a problem. Nox lifts a potion bottle toward the sky, thinking that he'll use his game knowledge to solve his stamina problem. Cut to the courtyard, and then the practice hall full of weapons and gear. Rona watches everything, confused, and asks why he needs all these strange supplies. Rona points out that the poison is dangerous, the other items are rare and expensive, and wonders if the stamina scroll isn't the only actually useful thing here. Nox calmly says the reason people avoid those items is simple. They just don't know how to use them properly. He steps back to the table, grabs the purple bottle of Gorgon poison without hesitation. Under Rona's shocked scream, Nox tilts his head back and starts chugging the deadly poison like it's just water. The maid rushes forward in shock, eyes wide and hand outstretched toward Nox after seeing him drink the liquid. Nox grips his chest with one hand and the bottle with the other, sweat running down his face as the poison starts to take effect. Close-up of Nox's eyes as his expression hardens, showing his resolve while he endures the poison. A dark system window appears. It confirms Nox has drunk the three-headed Gorgon's poison and says his health will temporarily rise by 1.5 times. Another system window pops up, starting a death countdown and showing a 10-minute timer ticking from 9:59. Nox clenches the cart's handle, his hand trembling as the poison and the sudden time limit sink in. A feminine hand reaches out and stops the maid from running off, pressing down on her wrist. Nox casually bites into the red golem core like fruit, tasting it with a calm, curious expression. The maid freaks out, clutching her head in panic, while a system window pops up, saying he's eaten the golem core and his body will slowly turn to stone. A system window pops up. Nox's combo of Gorgon poison and golem core has triggered a hidden effect. He notes that everything is going according to plan. Close-up of Nox's face, he smiles slightly, sweat on his cheek, convinced this is the method he was aiming for. Illustration panel. It explains the golem core's original use: to rapidly harden a body into stone to boost defense or to fully petrify someone, and also as a key material for creating artificial golems. The bottle of Gorgon poison pours out, turning into a three-headed serpent made of venom as glowing lines rain down around it, showing a powerful reaction starting. Several system windows flash in front of Nox, announcing a special effect, the poison weakening and one of his negative traits getting erased. Nox clenches his fist with a confident grin, sweat on his face but eyes shining, clearly happy his risky plan worked. The maid freaks out, spiraling eyes and all, convinced the young master might actually die from what he just did. She rushes over, panicking and asking if he's okay, while Nox thinks to himself that there's still one last step left. The maid peeks through her fingers, confused and scared, watching what he'll do next. Nox starts unbuttoning his shirt, sweating, bracing himself to carry out that final step. Nox grabs the white bottle from the cart, while the maid panics behind him. He pours the dew of the remembering fairy over his head. The system says the petrification is removed. The dew reacts with the golem core. Nox stands soaked, sensing the strange effect. System window pops up. A hidden piece activates and grants a temporary blessing of growth trait. Another window explains the buff. Until his stamina reaches 5, all his stat growth is doubled. Nox smirks, satisfied. He reaches toward the last remaining item on the card, the Rapid Stamina Growth Scroll. Nox tears open the Rapid Stamina Growth Scroll as magic symbols flare around him. He's his thoughts. Curse removed, Blessing of Growth is holding back the penalties from his terminal ill trait. He clenches his fist, satisfied, realizing his stat growth is now above normal, and he can raise his stamina much faster. The maid suddenly jumps forward and tackles Nox to the ground, hugging him in panic. She pulls back, frantically checking his face and chest to see if he's hurt, while Nox just looks at her calmly. Flustered, she waves her fists and scolds him for stripping so suddenly. Nox winces and just gestures for her to hand him a towel. Marvel. In Marvel with 10,000 multiplier system. Nox smiles casually with his shirt half open, deciding to ease up on her now that his curse is gone. They talk in a practice hall. Nox acts relaxed, while the maid anxiously checks if he's really okay and suggests he should rest instead of pushing himself. Nox turns away, walking beside the maid down the hall. He glances back with a confident grin, deciding on his next training step. Cut to the bright courtyard outside. The day clear and calm as training continues. Marvel. In Marvel with 10,000 multiplier system. The maid chases after him with a towel and clothes, yelling as he keeps running laps. From behind the iron railing, someone quietly watches Nox and the maid running around the yard. Talia's gloved hand clenches on the table, showing she's bothered. She leans on her arm, watching Nox run and wondering why someone that weak would accept a duel with his brothers. Her older maid, Emma, notices and gently scolds her for staring at the youngest Rian heifer son. Talia leans on the barred window, staring out into the practice yard while Emma scolds her for watching. Annoyed, Talia waves her arms, ranting that Nox never uses a sword and only runs laps all day. Down in the yard, Nox faces two nervous knights who mention that, despite everyone offering to train him, he refused every single offer. Talia watches Nox train, imagining him getting wrecked in the duel a month from now. Homework. Charge scene description. Emma notices her mood shift and calls out to her in concern. Talia rushes out of the hall, gripping her wooden practice sword, clearly fired up about something. Cut to the courtyard. Empty space, sunlight, and trees. Then a running shadow appears on the ground. Talia arrives to find Nox sitting on the ground, catching his breath, while the maid behind him lies passed out from exhaustion. A confident red-haired girl in light training clothes stands in front of him, introducing herself as Talia. Nox freezes, stunned that this heroine suddenly came looking for him. From the ground, he looks up at her, wary, while she steps closer, saying she's heard of him and wants to talk. Talia stares at Nox, confused and a bit hurt by how distant he seems. She flips into narcissist mode, posing proudly as sparkles and roses bloom behind her, convincing herself he's just stunned by her beauty. With roses still in the background, she clasps her hands behind her back, squares her shoulders, and stands in front of Nox, suddenly fired up with confidence. Talia steps closer, eyes sharp, clearly challenging Nox about fighting his brothers. Nox just stares back, quietly, unreadable, giving her no clear answer. The maid, still catching her breath, sides with Talia and questions whether running alone is enough training. Talia stands proudly with a hand on her chest, confidently offering to help him train. Nox casually walks past her without interest, bluntly rejecting her offer while she stares in shock and hurries after him. Talia explodes in anger, face flushed as she shouts at his rude attitude for turning down her help. The maid laughs nervously, shouting at Nox that girls will hate that attitude. Talia explodes in anger, yelling at him. She storms off with her sword on her back, telling him to do whatever he wants while Nox flinches. In the courtyard, Nox stands beside his maid. She's laughing, teasing him, while he just looks blank and confused. Close-up of Nox. He sighs internally, thinking this whole situation with Talia just got annoying and complicated. The insight window pops up over the courtyard, showing Talia's info. Nox reads Talia's trait window. Tons of positives for swordsmanship and hero-like personality, plus some quirky inferiority/superiority issues. He's shocked at how busted her overall talent is. Her stats pop up: stamina 6, mana 3, luck 5, will 7. Nox notes that most adult men only have around 4 stamina. So for a 14-year-old girl, her physical potential is insane. He mentally compares that raw talent to the famous swordsmen of the continent, including his own father, realizing she has the makings of a top-tier knight. Nox compares Talia's talent to the strongest sword masters on the continent. He thinks she could grow to the level of the 4 great mages at the very least. He concludes she's strong enough to take down a few demons on her own. Status window highlights Talia's main element as fire, while Nox links it to her potential. In his mind, Talia stands wreathed in raging flames, her fire magic growing so strong it evolves into white flames. That same blazing Talia is shown in the future, sword drawn and engulfed in fire, as those flames are used to burn a demonized Nox. A chessboard visual. Pieces topple as Nox thinks the future will change too much if he interferes. He decides he must follow the original story while somehow avoiding his death. Nox walks the corridor, exhausted, wondering if he can really get along with the girl who is destined to kill him. Cut to an ornate hall filled with sunlight. Text shows that 1 month has passed. Talia walks through the grand hallway of the manor, looking tense and deep in thought. Close-up of her face, she looks slightly downcast, remembering something. Flashback. In a training hall, knights and instructors praise her rapid improvement with the sword. Talia remembers the knights praising her rapid progress and family talent. Her expression hardens as she quietly repeats those words to herself. Close-up of her burning eyes, showing her determination to prove that talent on her own terms. In a flashback arena, Talia's older sister stands victorious, sword casually lowered after overwhelming her. Talia is on her knees, weapon dropped, staring up at her sister in defeat. Back in the present, Talia walks through the ornate hall with her head down, weighed down by the memory. Talia's hand tightens around the sword at her waist. She stares down, wondering if she can truly become a knight. A shining armored knight appears in symbolism, describing the ideal knight. Free of greed, living simply, sacrificing themselves for the greater good. Marvel. In Marvel with 10,000 multiplier system. Under the night sky, she admits to herself she doesn't believe his victory is possible. Caption shows the next day as the sun rises over the Reinhalter estate. In the arena, Nox and his older brother stand facing each other in the circular stone ring, surrounded by onlookers. Up on the balcony, the family and nobles watch the duel from above, Talia among them. Close up on a composed noblewoman. Theo's first wife, Facilia, calmly observes the scene. Theo turns to Rodwell, calling for his opinion. Theo sits with legs crossed, arms folded, calmly asking how the duel will turn out. Rodwell looks tense and troubled, struggling to give an answer. The referee steps forward in the arena, getting everyone's attention from the stands. He announces the official duel for the Academy seat as both brothers take their positions with swords drawn. Nox locks his gaze on his opponent, tense but ready. At the signal, the older brother charges first, blades crashing together as the duel kicks off.